Hey, pool chasers. Before Jobber, we were really struggling to keep track of our customers in an efficient way. Our team was writing things down on pieces of paper in our trucks, taking notes on our phones, and performing pool service bids in under 5 minutes. We didn't really know any different back then. We were just doing our best to juggle all of it. One day, we got a bad review saying that we told a potential customer we would come out for a bid, and we never showed up, called, or communicated to him in any way. At the time, myself, Greg, and a few others were answering phones. Between all of us, no one knew who the gentleman was. It was very frustrating because we prided ourselves on great customer service. For all we know, it could have been the wrong company, but we were not going to let it happen again. We then spent the next few weeks looking into different solutions. We found Jobber and fell in love with the process. Their software guides you from the initial inquiry to scheduling, quoting, taking deposits, and routing, all the way up to automatic invoicing and payments. It really does it all, while saving you time and keeping you from chasing money. Best of all, it's fully customizable. You can create custom forms for call inquiries, bids, chemical readings, jobs performed, and anything you really want to keep track of. It's your company. Track only the information you want to. Since you listen to the show, you know that we always look to ask questions and share things that we would have wanted to know about the topic. Our conversation today is no different. We brought on one of Jobber's experts and asked him everything we would have wanted to know and add exactly how we use the software to the conversation. It's a great episode for anyone who is looking to be more professional, more organized, and more efficient. So, let's jump into episode 110 with Chris Gardner of Jobber.
Welcome to your go-to podcast for the pool and spa industry. My name is Tyler Rasmussen.
And my name is Greg Villafania. And this is the Pool Chasers Podcast.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us today, Chris. We appreciate you being here. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your role at Jobber?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. I've been with Jobber now for a little over a year. Prior to coming to Jobber, I ran a lawn care business while I was in university. So when I got wind of a tech company here in Edmonton, Alberta, that was starting something up for service-based businesses, I kind of kept my eye on it and made the jump last year. So I was on the sales team for almost a full calendar year where I was kind of on the ground working with businesses day to day. And just over the last few months, I've got the pleasure to move over to an affiliate role with the marketing team where I get to work with guys like yourself. So it's been a whirlwind, but great so far.
Nice. How'd you get into the lawn care business?
Honestly, I had a friend who had done it. He was a couple years older than me, had done it while he was in university. It was time to move on. And so he had the equipment and I was able to buy it off him for fairly cheap. And basically had at the time, had my dad help me out, figure out how to do my first schedule, my first couple invoices. And kind of grew it from there. So I actually ran it for 3 years and ended up, by the time I was done, I had 2 extra trucks in the field. And it was an unbelievable experience, especially as a young guy, just learning the ins and outs of business. So,
see, I'm sure your dad was like, see, all that yard work paid off.
Exactly.
You were complaining about it as a kid, but
the first thing he said to me is, if I'm going to help you, you cut our yard for free. So he definitely got his share there.
Oh man, if I'd have turned into
Nice.
a landscaper, a lawn care person, my dad would be tripping out. Like, really? You suck at doing yard work. Oh, that's cool.
That's cool. You must really understand what people are going through then when they're setting up these businesses through Jobber. It must have really helped you in that customer service part of it.
Yeah, you know what? It definitely gave me an appreciation when I'm talking to clients. One of the important things we try to do is make sure we understand their workflow and some of the headaches they're going through. And luckily enough, I've had firsthand experience with those headaches. So when they talk about losing or forgetting to follow up on a quote or anything along those lines, I feel that firsthand. So definitely has helped me early on here at Jobber.
That's awesome. And that's what we love most about Jobber is you guys are willing to listen to the people that are doing the work. We've been talking on and off the past couple weeks with you, Chris, and there's so many features that we didn't even know existed, and we're so excited to jump into this because I was blown away. And these are all things that, myself brought up, Tyler brought up, and a lot of other people in the service industry, and it is working just the way that every service company needs it to. So really excited to jump into all of this.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely much more advanced than when we were using it full time. So we were super stoked to see all the upgrades and excited to talk about them. For those that don't really know what Jobber is, can you kind of give a brief overview of it real quick?
Absolutely. So Jobber is a service-based software. So effectively, we're here to help with every aspect of your business. So everything from quoting to invoicing and anything you might find in between. So, a lot of times when we're chatting with clients, they're coming to us from, pen and paper is still the number one competitor in this market. And when you start a service-based business, there's a lot of things going on in the back end. And when you have 3 or 4 clients, it might be okay. You might be able to manage that with just your organizational skills. Once it starts to grow to a full-sized company, that's where it starts to get, there's a lot of things that can slip on the back end, and that's where your performance starts to slip. So Jobber is a software that we're here to kind of help. And like I said, anything from when you send off a quote to scheduling your employees to making sure you get paid for the work that you're doing. That's what Jobber's here to help with.
Yeah, I remember we were going from like 50 clients or so. I could manage 50 clients with my notes in my phones and, being able to remember things and every week and remembering to bring extra parts. I could remember about 50. Started to push 75, started a little slip. But when you get to 100 clients, man, I couldn't keep anything organized. I would forget what was going on out there, forget to bring parts, forget things like that. And, that's when we really started looking for an alternative, because it was just like, I can't, we're missing out on money. We're missing out on time because I'm having to go back and get parts and things like that. So that's really when it switched happened. I told Greg, I'm like, I can't manage it anymore. I just don't know where everything's going. So there's definitely a point in a service business when you realize that it's too much.
Yeah, and that's why we're constantly preaching to those that just get into the pool service business, or they're just doing repairs or anything in the service industry, is start using a CRM, something like Jobber, right away. Don't waste any time because it's so much easier to learn how to use the platform like Jobber when you have maybe just yourself or a couple other guys and maybe under 50 accounts. It's so much easier to use all that, and you get to master it. You allow yourself to master the CRM, and it's no big deal in growing your business. That way you get to focus on training your team, because there's so many other things that you have to do as a company. So it's like, if you're listening to this and you've got, because I think a lot of people think that it's like, my business is so small, I don't really need all of this right now. You're going to need it at some point in time. You might want to learn how to use it when you're smaller.
Yeah, and it will, all the features we're going to get into today will explain why, but even if you are a smaller company, it will help you be way more efficient with everything that you're doing. So there's definitely reason to get into it now for sure.
I'm telling you right, I'm so excited because I've been playing with this. This shit is legit. Would have saved my ass so much freaking time. You people don't even know.
I know, right? Well, we did talk to Sam on episode 11 of the podcast a few years ago and kind of talks about the origin of Jobber. So if you guys are interested in listening to that, check that one out because it's a pretty cool story. But we're going to get a lot more technical here on this episode with Chris. So Greg mentioned the word CRM. Can you explain what that is exactly and why it's so important for a service business?
Absolutely. So first of all, CRM stands for customer relationship management. And what that really entails is, and I think you guys nailed it there, when you guys are landing new clients, you need to keep track of these clients. And like you said, when you had 50 clients, you might be able to remember everything about all 50 of those clients, whether it's where their house is located, a gate code, you name it. You might be able to remember that. But as you continue to grow, it is incredibly important to have documentation on each and every one of these clients for a number of reasons. It helps you run your business smoother on the back end, but it also gives a personalized touch to that client so that when they call you a year after the last time you came out for service, you're able to simply search their name and have everything listed underneath them, whether it's the work you've done for them, whether it's their address, even if it's photos that you took of their pool last time you were out. That kind of information is incredibly key to help continue to build that business, because 50 clients is easy to manage, but when you get to 75 and you start forgetting things, now that growth starts to slow down. So something like a CRM on the back end really allows you to facilitate that growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So when a pool company calls in, what's the first thing that you're asking them, and how are you determining if the software is a good fit for them and you?
Absolutely. I think the first thing and most important thing is what's the workflow? What's the system you're currently running with? Because we're not here to try and recreate a workflow for you. We're not here to tell you how to run your company. We're simply here to help you run your company. So we want to know how are you sending quotes? How are you tracking the clients that you have? This type of stuff is really important because what it allows us to do is then understand if the software is going to be a good fit for you. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure everyone has signed up for something with good intentions and then completely forgotten about it the next day. And, it kind of gets dropped off the wayside. We want to make sure that if you're looking at a software for your company, that we are going to be a bang on fit and we're going to help you with every aspect of your business. So when a pool company comes in, I want to know, how are you scheduling your clients? How are you interacting with your clients? How do you send off a quote? Is it a paper quote, which is really common nowadays? Or do you have some sort of a system where you maybe go back to your home and, send off a quote at the end of the day? We want to know those kind of things because we want to see if there's anywhere that we might be able to help. And the quote is a great example because a lot of times people are maybe writing everything down in a notebook, getting home, putting it into a Word document and emailing it off. Well, would it be easier if you were able to create the quote while you're standing with the client in their backyard and send it to them, or even have them sign on your phone to approve it immediately? It's that sort of thing that we want to learn about to kind of help move that business along.
Very good. And let's talk about the different inbound inquiries that could come in and how Jobber can help with those. Because, they're coming in, by email, they're coming in by phone call. They see a technician in the neighborhood. You've got next door now. What is Jobber doing to keep up with that communication?
Absolutely. So you nailed it. There's a number of different ways that inbound calls or emails come through. I think one of the big ones we see all the time nowadays is when you start a business, the first thing you think is, well, we need to have a Facebook page, we need to have an online presence, because everything is moving that direction. So the first step I would say is make sure we have a request form built out on your page. So a request form, I'm sure you guys have seen it. You've gone to a number of websites and you can fill out some information to send to that company in order to receive a quote back. Now, where we're going to kind of step up and help move that process even quicker is when a client hits your Facebook page and fills out a request form and answers all the questions a pool company might have for them. When they click submit on that customer, it's actually automatically going to build that client into your CRM. So now that client's information is saved without you guys ever having to touch anything. And that's really important because not every customer is going to say yes to your first quote. But now that you have that data saved, that's a client list that you're continuing to build for any marketing efforts down the road. So a request form is an awesome way for the first touch of a client to come through. It's automatically built into your system. That client's information is saved, and you as the business owner receive a notification immediately letting you know you have a new request for a quote. So we're making sure that we get that to you quick so that you can change that and move that quote out even quicker. So I think a request form is one of the main ways on the online side of things. On the in-person side of things, we've got a great app that we have built out, and it allows you to effectively, if a neighbor, we hear this all the time, neighbors will walk over and say, hey, you're cleaning my next door neighbor's house. Can you give me a quote? You can now do that on your phone immediately for that client. So instead of saying, absolutely, we'll send someone back over to come do that, you can walk over to that neighbor's yard. You can gather their information like you would out of any new client, and you can actually fill out a quote in a matter of minutes and send that off to them for approval. So what we're trying to do is just facilitate all those inbound ways to make sure that you're able to move that out and to the client as quick as possible and hopefully convert them into a paying client.
Right. And I love that because now with all the technology, technicians, the owners, managers, you can have business cards made up with a QR code that'll actually take you right to the request form. And that's huge. So a customer, you're servicing a pool and the next door neighbor says, hey, do you have a card? Can I get a little bit more information? You could simply hand them a card and say, you can scan this and this will take you directly to our website. And it's a request form and it goes right back to our office manager and they'll set you up to where you can pick a day, a time to come out and take a look at your pool. So we've been playing a lot with the request form and love the feature of being able to edit things, because that is something that, a lot of the software we've been using has been lacking the capabilities of editing things because each pool is different, each company is different, and we love that we're able to actually edit that form because there are certain questions that we want to ask. It's the address, what's going on? Are you looking for pool service or repair? And you can put in those drop downs where it's pool service, pool and spa service, bi-weekly service, repairs, upgrades. You can add whatever it is that you want to add and pick a day that works for you. Pick another day that works for you. For us, it was 2-hour windows. So we added in between 8 and 10, 10 and 12, 12 and 2, 2 and 4. And that way people can just get all that information to you. And things are not getting lost in translation where they often do when you're in your truck and you're in your vehicle and you're trying to field that call. I don't have the greatest memory, so there's a lot of things that I'm not going to get right. And the office manager is there, and sometimes typos happen, but now you're putting it in their hands, in the customer's hands, where they have to answer those questions correctly. And once they get done with it, that's the beautiful part, is it gets submitted to your CRM so that they are always connected. All that information that they filled out from the very beginning is going back. You can send that form anywhere. Somebody on Instagram says, hey, how do I set something up? You can send them that link. On Facebook, you can send them that link. And it's really easy. I'm just going to talk about it because I just got done doing it. I know because you kind of walked us through it, Chris, and I appreciate it. We're going to definitely do some videos on this. But, creating the form is really easy. And once you do it, you just get an embedded code that you can put on your website. And it's seriously that easy. And customizing that form is extremely easy. Is that pretty much how you've seen people using it?
Yeah, and you nailed it. I think the customization for people is what's key. Like I said, every business is run differently. What you guys are collecting on an inbound request could be completely different from a competitor that they're collecting. So what we want to do is that customization allows you to get all the relevant information. And what's most important about that is now that you've got that information, the first time you actually speak to that client, you're equipped with everything you need to know about that service. So now you're going into it with this leg up and a bit more of a professional feel when it comes to talking to that client, because you know everything about what they're looking for. You're almost in your head, you're pre-prepped for the quote or the job that you're going to be booking for that client. So we want to make sure that you're armed with everything. And likewise, we want to make sure the client has a great, interaction with your company right off the bat, because if they're Googling local pool companies and they see your Facebook page, is it easier for them to, maybe see a phone number and have to call around to all these companies? Or is it easier for them to click a button that says request a quote, fill out their information, and now, within minutes, you guys can even reach out and get back to them. So that is the goal behind the request form, is we're just trying to facilitate all those inbounds.
Right. And customers are still going to be calling your business. That is still happening. So what have you set up? Can you go over, being able to edit the property details? Because I feel like that prompts an office manager or somebody that's going to open that new client into asking the right questions. Because I'll tell you right now, when we were training our office manager, we had like a 2-3 page document of all the things to say and all the questions to ask. So can you talk about, those details as well when a call comes in?
Absolutely. So likewise with the request form on your website, that also lives on the back end. So if you have somebody like an office manager who is answering your inbound line and a new client calls in, it's as simple as clicking on a new request, and that will bring up that exact form that you see on your website, allowing effectively making sure that your office manager is covering every piece of information that you need. So of course, we're going to gather the simple stuff like the customer's name, address, and phone number, but all the other details are really important. And, it's tough for them because they've got so many things going on. How do they remember to ask all those questions? Those questions are sitting on that form. So it allows them to fill it out as if they were the customer online filling the form out. And then of course, there's also an internal notes and attachments button or box at the bottom that allows them to gather any other details that maybe, they didn't think or they didn't find a box for. So if it was something, you can get quite expansive on that. Whether I have seen even people put, this customer asked many detailed question heads up. It allows you to give whoever's going out to produce that quote a bit of a heads up as to what to expect. So we want to make sure that we're facilitating anything that comes through the phones as well. Right.
And we love that even when you get done with that, you can send them a reminder of everything. If you set up a day to come out and do an assessment, you can send them a very professional email that has all that information. And we love that. Just yesterday, Kyle was telling us about this experience that he had when he was getting his air condition fixed. And after it got done, the technician was very professional, and he got a email afterwards and said, this is what, the coil looked like when I got here. This is the new one. Really educated him on all those different things. And it's not very often, especially it's 2020. There's a lot of technology out there, but I'm yet to get a very good service, like a professional service. There's still people kind of doing like carbon copy, pen and paper, like you said, or it's just kind of like a plain text email. But, just that level of professionalism goes a really long way.
Absolutely. And I think the other important thing to note too is that if you have an office manager answering the phone, a lot of times it's the communication that can actually be the issue. So if I'm maybe answering the phone for Tyler in this example, and I take down all these notes and I'm not using any sort of software, and then I commit Tyler to a time in his schedule tomorrow that, it turns out Tyler actually was just at a neighbor's house and committed himself for that time. Now we're really starting to see an influx of, problems that are happening. So when that request comes through and your office manager is gathering all those details, he or she is actually even able to schedule that on-site assessment immediately. And when you toggle that on, what it allows it to do is it'll pull up Tyler's schedule as the business owner in this example. And then she or he can go, great, Tyler has a time between 2 and 4, your 2-hour window, as you mentioned. Let's schedule you in for that. And when she or he goes to submit that, it'll actually send Tyler a notification to let him know that there's been an assessment booked for tomorrow. So now what we're trying to do is help with that communication side of things so that we don't forget to tell Tyler about that job. Now we don't show up to produce that quote, or we remember late and now we're late. That's a really bad first experience for that client. We want to make sure that from the first phone call, that client has an amazing experience like Kyle had with his AC unit repair.
Yeah, it's huge, because when I remember the first time we hired an office manager, like when they were giving time frames or they were telling people we'd be there at a certain time, she'd be like, yeah, we'll be there at 9:30, and we could constantly tell her, no, we need like 2-hour windows. And it was super frustrating as a person going out there doing the bid if you think you have a 2-hour window and they think it's 9:30 and you get there, and like that interaction with that customer, like you said, is really the first impression. So it's really awkward for us too, because it's like, man, I told you, like, this is the process, this is what we're supposed to be doing, and now you put me in this weird awkward position. This customer's most likely not going to accept this bid, and we just wasted everybody's time. So that's huge on that communication piece right there.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, is educating your office manager and also the customer that we give a 2-hour window. We'd love to tell you an exact time when we're going to be there, because your time is very valuable. But when we get to your house, we're not going to rush through anything. We don't ever know how long it's going to take for us to be at a house. So we want to make sure that we're giving each one of our customers the time that they need in order for us to kind of assess the pool of the equipment. There's so many different things going on that we're not going to rush through anything. But the cool thing is, and we will get into that, is that maybe we will be there sooner, and we can send you a text message that says we're going to be there in 30 minutes, an hour, whatever it may be, just to kind of keep them on point with all of that.
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things that we have in the software is just a lot of customer facing pieces to help out with any of that, to make sure that it's always a professional look for them. So like you said, I know we'll touch on it later, but in the app, if you open up your next job and you're maybe running ahead of schedule, it's a 2-button click and a text message is sent to the client letting them know the timeout from you arriving. So I can tell you that's huge. I waited for my cable guy a couple of weeks ago, and they were supposed to be here in the 2-hour window, and it was about 5 hours later when I got my phone call saying they have to reschedule for the next day. And if I had more cable options, I would have switched companies at that point. So there's a big reason for it.
Right. It's all about that experience.
Yeah. I want to go back a quick second, because when you set up systems and processes, like, this becomes so much more important. And you were talking about the business card earlier with the QR code. I remember, like, a lot of the reason we gave the guys business cards was for that reason, because we had a system and a process set up for a bid. And if you can't control that, you have no way of like figuring out how that bid came through, or you have no way of figuring out how that this person was told that they were going to get a bid or a call and that never happened. But if you have those customization cards or you have the customization app, like you can totally control, how your system works and how it flows through your process, because, your technicians may not be the person you want doing the customer service interaction. You know what I mean? We had great technicians, but that's not their job. They're not trained to be a customer service person, and they don't know the systems and processes. So by giving them something with a QR code that allows them to now send the person through the correct process makes that communication much better. And then, like you said, Chris, when you're out in the field, if you're the owner, you can take that quote and it goes through the process. So it's always, when you set up the systems and processes, this whole entire thing helps you go through each channel, because that helps with the frustration areas.
Absolutely. And as a new business, I mean, we have lots of, current businesses running for years that move over to our software. But even as a new business, there's a lot of this stuff you never even think about. Like, you're more worried about, hey, let's make sure we get the job done well. Let's make sure we get paid for that job. Like, that's initially the first things that go through your head when you start a service-based business. Our software, what we're trying to do is make sure that those little holes that you might not think of, we're there to make sure that those are prepared and ready to go for the launch of your company. So yeah, it all is incredibly important in the big picture.
Right.
We want to thank Pentair for supporting the show. As a podcast for pool professionals, we know that when you sell products, it's your reputation on the line. And when they are Pentair products, it's theirs as well. That's why Pentair's got your back with their trade grade program, which supports your business and reputation by offering exclusive tools and support for lead generation, attractive product rebates and longer warranties, and an unmatched expertise when it comes to accurate equipment selection, setup, and service. So to learn more about how Trade Grade protects, empowers, and helps your business grow, visit pentair.com/trade grade. That's pentair.com/trade grade, or click the link below.
So we always talk about how important that initial bid is, and, setting the expectation, and there's a lot of things that go with it. Can we talk about what the capabilities are with Jobber after getting that form? So they fill out the form with their address and all the details of what they're looking for. It gets on the schedule. And this is what we talked about before this phone call. What are we turning that request into at this point in order to go out and do an assessment?
Absolutely. So once the request is in the schedule, when you arrive to that house, it's a simple button click allowing you to convert this to a quote. And what we want to have happen is, and you guys have nailed it, carbon copy paper, there's a number of different ways people are quoting. We want you to be able to quote immediately. So when you select the convert to quote, what it's going to do is it's dragging all of the relevant information over to the quote now. So the customer's name, their address, everything you would expect to see from a quote that you receive. On top of that, we're then allowing you to go ahead and give out the prices for the services or products that you're offering. So when you're on site and you're going through everything that you need to complete on this job, you're filling out a number of different, what we call in the software, line items. But line items can simply be, let's use a weekly cleaning. It can be a weekly cleaning charge and what you're actually charging for this job. And we can help custom build those line items in the back end so that the titles are always the same. The prices can be completely different. You guys can adjust the prices on the fly at any point. Every pool is going to be different. Every job is going to be different. So you're able to complete and create a quote on the spot. And then you're able to actually send that quote to the client while you're standing there with them. So one of the big things that we see is a lot of times people will gather information, then they'll head back home, they'll make a quote up and they'll email it off. We want you to do that right while you're standing there. Sometimes in a perfect world, the client might go, you know what, this looks great. Let's go ahead and approve it. And in that case, on that quote, you can actually turn it to them and you can have them sign on your phone or tablet. So now you're collecting the signature and getting that quote approved immediately. Now that is a perfect world. You're not always going to run into that. So if they say, listen, I need to chat with the missus, give me a couple nights, I'll get back to you. At that point, then you can actually go ahead and click text message or email and send that quote to them immediately. So now this pool company, even if it was the neighbor that walked over and pulled you into their yard for a quote, they've now received a quote within minutes of you being at their location. And that is a really professional feel to it. And that will help you close even more jobs as well.
Very good. Thank you, Chris. I'm going to go back a little bit. So when you have the request, you have the capability of turning it into an on-site assessment. And at that point in time, you can turn it into an on-site assessment job. And when it becomes an on-assessment job, you can attach the form. Am I right? So we can make a custom weekly pool service bid form, and there's all kinds of different forms that you can make. But that to us is huge because now we're able to attach that form to the person and to that client so that when you go out and do that assessment, you can run through how many gallons is the pool, how many gallons is a spa, what's the chlorine, pH, alkalinity, do the baskets need to be replaced? There's drop downs, there's text features, there's number features, there's all these different things. And you can go as crazy as you want with it. You can put all the different major manufacturers in there. You can do all types of different things. So, because we're thinking about that when you're actually out there in the field and you're looking at the pool and the equipment and all of those things, what can you do proactively on the back end so that when you get there, it's a matter of hitting drop downs and just clicking all those things. That way, all that information that you're getting in the field can go back to home base.
Absolutely. So that's fantastic because that's what we call custom fields. And so custom fields is all that information that you'd want to gather on that job. So everything that you just mentioned there, drop down menus, check boxes, text fields, you can custom build that on the back end. And I think the most important part of that is when you get to that job and you're starting to fill out those custom fields, and let's say the client goes, great, we approve this quote, we want you to come do the job, and you convert that quote to a job, all of those custom fields carry with you. And that is incredibly important because I use the same example. I know you guys have heard me use it 10 times already, but I always use gate code. You don't want to have to ask them 10 times for their gate code. You want to ask one time, you want that saved on file, and you want that carried over to the job so that maybe Tyler is the one that goes out and quotes the job, but maybe I'm the guy that goes and does the work afterwards. I need to know every piece of information Tyler gathered so that I'm now equipped with it when I show up to do the work. And that's what custom fields are. And again, we're trying to help with the organization to make sure nothing slips between those cracks. And the customer, again, is the main piece of that.
Right. And you can even add in what is the SSDI and the Wi-Fi password, because, if it's a one-off job where they want to get new automation and you got to be able to tap into their Wi-Fi, like you just made the repair mechanic's day by having that information already in the system. So I think that's major.
Yeah, and you're creating the client profile, and you're never going to spend more time at the house than the initial bid process. So if, like you said, if you can create a manufacturer field and it says, like for this Pentair and Telefo, and you can put that within the system, then that client has a Pentair and Telefo. And that's huge throughout your relationship with the client, because if anything goes wrong with the pump, your technicians may not know the language, may not know exactly what that pump is, but because you spent the time on that initial bid and you put in all the initial client information, which is now what the importance of the CRM, then you have everything in there so that you know exactly what pump is there. You can fix it. You can bring the right parts. It's huge and a lot of saving time because everything in that customer profile is there forever. So it's really cool. You're never going to spend more time than that first initial bid there.
Right. And I noticed this other feature that I'm not sure if I'll explain this correctly, but it's tags. And I thought this would have been a really cool feature. Say there was if it had an old Intermatic time clock and we tagged it Intermatic time clock and we exported all of the clients that have that, and say we do email campaign because a new automation just went on sale and we want to do an email blast to all those people. We've just exported all of our clients and our CRM database to have an older style time clock. And you can tag your customers with all kinds of different things like that can help a lot of those different things. Am I right, Chris?
Yeah, you nailed that exactly. So tags are honestly the simplest way to kind of filter out your client list. So like you said, if you wanted to tag it for the type of filter, great. We see it other times you want to tag it with the type of service you're providing. So was this simply a service-based contract? Was this a weekly was this a weekly contract, a bi-weekly contract? And that allows you to then, when you do marketing efforts for the new year, or you go, January comes around and you go, okay, it's time to, renew our client list. You're now able to filter those clients out based on the types of service. And now that just makes your job easier when it comes to, re-landing your clients for the new year. Yeah. I know you guys are in Arizona, so the weather's a little bit nicer. You guys don't quite have to worry about the worry about the layover or the winters, but we're up in Canada. So, we have about 4 months of summer. So every new summer, you've got to send out a new campaign to those clients to recapture.
Right. So, back to the pool service bid, you're able to do that form, but you're also able to upload the photos. You can add any kind of notes that, you want to that account, because they might come out and just have some special requests, or they just want to talk about something that you will need to know. You're not going to be able to have every little thing in there. It's definitely good to have that option in there. So let me ask you this. Once you collect all that information, I'll tell you our process after this. Before Jobber had all these capabilities, and you let us know what you're able to do. So at this point, during a bid, we would add all the photos, all the notes, all those different things. We need to be able to send to the customer an email that has everything that we found there, photos, a service agreement, and a auto pay authorization form to keep a card on file. Yeah, and then just let them know when we can start. So it's like, you'll be on Wednesday's route, and we can be there anytime between this time and this time. But what do we do at that point to make all that happen?
Absolutely. So on the base level, we've created a quote that we're ready to send to the client. So we're going to email that off to the client in this example. Now, you mentioned you've got a couple other forms and maybe some photos that need to accompany that quote. When you go to send a quote through the app, or whether it's back at your office, there is an option to attach attachments. And with those attachments can be your service forms, they can be your authorization forms, they can be the photos that you guys have taken on the job. We can actually just select those from the job page. You don't even need to pull them off the phone. They're already saved there, ready for you to send to the client should you choose. So now that you've selected all of those things, the one big thing, and I know we were chatting about this prior, was the authorization form. So on the quote, what we actually allow the customer to do is sign the quote. So they can put an e-signature on this quote through their email, they can access it, or through text message, they can access it. And there's actually an e-signature box. So you could put a stipulation at the bottom of your quote saying, by signing the quote, you're agreeing to the authorization form and the amendments on, the two documents that accompany this. And what it allows you to do is send one professional email to that client with everything related to their service. And it gives them a good feeling, because now they're seeing all this documentation, and that's their first sign that, okay, this company really knows what they're doing. They've got all their ducks in a row. So we want to make sure that when you guys send that out via email or text message, everything comes with it, to make sure it's a one-stop shop for that client to approve the quote and get it back to you guys to get it scheduled in for your route.
Yeah. What would the quote look like if we're going to charge $120 a month? What does that look like on the quote? Is that like 120 times 12 months, or is that what does that look like? Because what I'm getting at is there's going to be other things. It might be $120 a month, but there might be, some O-rings and a filter clean and some special chemicals that need to be added to the pool. And maybe they need a quote on a new pump or something like that. But how are we squeezing all of that in? Because obviously that pool service monthly charge is going to be separate. That's what's going to be charged every month. And that one-off repair is just a one-off repair.
Absolutely. And you know what? This is the cool part about Jobber is I would ask that pool service company what system or what process is going to work best for you. So if you said to me, listen, we are going to go out every 2 weeks to clean this pool, but maybe it's once a month, we're going to have to add on a new filter to that charge. At any point when you have that job booked in, that biweekly service booked in, you can open up that the quote or the job itself and add a new line item. And a line item is, again, what you're charging the customers for. So if you're at their home and then you decide you need to add a new charge to this visit specifically, and not the entire, every 2 weeks, this isn't going to be a charge you're charging for. You can add one-off charges to that bill and send it to the customer. And again, what that allows you to do is make sure that you always consistently are charging them for the biweekly service. But on top of that, anything you're doing additionally when you show up, you can charge for, and make sure that, again, it's a clean bill that the customer receives, and they very clearly see on that invoice a biweekly service, the charge you offered, so $120 in this example. And underneath that, another line item stating a filter change and the price that accompanies that. So we make sure to break it down individually, and on the invoice or quotes or anything like that, it's completely customizable and very professional. It'll have your logo at the top, your color scheme, client's information, basically exactly what you would picture from a completed invoice.
That's awesome. So it seems like for the very first quote you would send them could be $120 a month for pool service, and here's these miscellaneous line items. And then once they get that, maybe you would create something that was more just the reoccurring. So it's like after that, it would just be setting them up at $120 a month reoccurring, but you can tack on other things that will come up in time.
Exactly. And the nice part too is it's not always going to work that perfectly. They might have an issue with their pool that needs you to get out there immediately and not be one of your recurring visits. This is like hey, Tyler, I need you to get here now. Like something's going on. You can create a one-off job for that client that won't affect their recurring schedule whatsoever, but will be saved to their client page so that if they call you in 2 months and say, hey, remember that filter you changed, you can still go back and reference all your recurring work or the one-off job you did for them. So we want to make sure that you guys can handle any sort of request from that client as far as scheduling.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as that initial bid process, can you talk about like optional line items? Because I think that's a pretty cool feature that's not, necessarily charged right away, but it's an option down the road that might need to be done.
Totally. So on our Grow package at Jobber, we have something called optional line items. And, I was in sales, so I'll use what I know, but you're always, upselling is a big piece. When you go out to a job and they say, hey, we'd love you to do some pool maintenance, and you go through and you list everything that is in a standard pool maintenance package, that's great. But there might be a couple other features or services that maybe you guys have just added and are brand new, and you want to at least make sure the customer is aware of them. You can add what we call optional line items to quotes, where it is effectively a checkbox that the client can go, they see their base quote of, let's say, $120, and then underneath they see some options that they can select. And maybe they look at one and go, I never would have thought of that. Let's go ahead and add that to our overall recurring service. Well, whatever you're charging for that, that's now new incremental income coming in. And that's really where you start to see the ROI of the software come through. Because if, out of 10 customers, if one customer chooses one extra line item for whatever that's worth, you're now making that month over month. And that adds up really, really quickly. So optional line items are just, I always talk, they're a phenomenal way to see the ROI in the software.
Yeah. And we talked about, you now have the capability of adding photos, right, to the line items.
Absolutely, you do. Absolutely. And that's great because, a lot of times they're not pool experts by any means, right? So when you quote them something, they might not even know what feature that is in their pool. So if you have a photo to accompany it, now the professionalism of that quote just looks so much better. And they know that you know what you're talking about effectively.
Right. And is that just like a little icon, or is that something that people can actually expand on, like that image?
Yeah, absolutely. They can expand on it. So, when they look at the quote, it'll be a little icon. If they select the photo, they can expand that photo and actually see what you're looking at on that end. So, and you guys can get creative. You guys can take a photo directly up from your phone and just attach it to that. You guys can also save that photo on your phone if you guys need to do any, edits, or if you need to draw on that photo and then reattach it to the quote, you can do that after the fact as well. So that comes huge when it comes to, pool construction, and you need to do a full drawing for them. You want to be able to edit those photos and attach them to the quote.
Right. And we've always said that being in the pool business, we should be offering everything to our customers. We're getting into pool season in the spring. Like, tell them you have a package that is pool noodles and goggles and, flippers and floats and all these different things, ledge lounger. They have a ton of awesome poolside furniture. Like, put those individually in there. And that's just, there's so many different things that you can do where you can send it to them and say, like, if you're interested in this, like if they have a catalog and they're like, oh, I really like this, like you can send them a really nice professional quote, and there'll be like a photo of, what they're going to get. So is it possible to have your services like line items with images on an embedded code on your website?
Not as of now. No, on your website, if you guys had uploaded that, absolutely. On the request form, which is the part that we effectively plug into the website, we don't have any sort of photos attached as of now. We love to take this feedback. I think you guys kind of nailed it earlier on. We chatted with you guys probably 2 or 3 years ago, and there was a ton of feedback, ton of features that you guys would like to see in it. And I think we've done a pretty good job of building out a lot of those features and becoming a little more full circle. So that's the sort of stuff that we don't have now, but it definitely is something that I'm sure we'll look at in the future.
Definitely. You guys have done a phenomenal job at listening to your customers.
But back to the adding options, like we always talk about not spending your customers' money. Like, don't judge a book by its cover in a lot of reasons. Like, you may not know what's important to those clients. So like you said, giving them the options of buying and being that, all-in-one service for them, making them not go to the store or go on Amazon and buy a pool float or noodles. Like, you can offer that stuff, and you don't want to spend their money. Maybe that you don't know what's important to them. Maybe all that stuff is important. Maybe they want ledge lounges and you've never talked to them about it, and you just provided that service and made the money. So
they're human. If you tell yourself, like, man, they're not going to want that ledge lounger, they're not going to want that float, they're not going to want that. I try to get them on this, pump or filter or whatever it may be. But like, yeah. Because
they don't know what that is.
Nobody wants to spend $1,500 on some shit that sits on the side. I'm not saying that they don't need that, but it's just completely different. It's like, look at this beautiful chair. Look at this beautiful float. Look at these toys for your kids. We used to see tons of new toys and stuff in backyards. Somebody sold it to them.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Take that out. Let them know that you're a one-stop shop. What do you need? Shit, I'll bring a friggin' 24-pack whatever the hell it is that you drink here next time. You don't need to go anywhere. I'm Amazon. I'm Walmart. I'm Leslie's.
No, you guys nailed it. And the nice part is too, the quotes, none of the optional line items are checked off. So if the customer goes, I'm not interested in any of this, no harm, no foul, nothing's added to the quote, and you guys move on with the services agreed upon. But if they do see something like that, if you put a 24-pack of beer on my quote, I might just take you up on that offer to deliver. That saves me a trip out. So,
oh, that's funny. Awesome.
I think the optional line items also works for like specialty chemicals. A lot of companies offer that as a secondary service. So, weekly algicides, weekly phosphate removers, things like that. And if you put those optional line items on, you may be surprised that they'll check those things to make sure that their pool is getting the full treatment. So it works in that case too. I know a lot of companies use higher end, optional chemicals like that. So,
take this time and think of, with all these customizable features, think about how you can be creative with it. Because now just talking about it, I'm thinking about, say a PolarX or a Renda, where it's like you can do a YouTube video on it and talk about this. And it's like, if you want us to add this, to your pool or whatever it may be, like hit the link below in the details of the YouTube video. It can take even to your website with a request form, and maybe one of those requests is on there where it's like, a one-time chemical, out. How did you hear about us? A YouTube video. Like, you can customize so many different things. Take advantage of that, because that was always our biggest thing, was we want to be able to like play with the system a little bit. We want to be able to customize it to 2020 so that, we can get all the benefits out of it.
How many of you shop with only one wholesale distributor? Why do we do that? It's great to have options, just like you give your customers options, right? And you never know when you're going to need a part. So why not check out Pool and Electrical Products, also known as PEP? They are an independent wholesale distributor of pool and spa products. PEP does not supply online or big box stores, and they have been proudly serving the pool and spa professional trade since 1992. Today, they operate 28 convenient locations throughout Arizona, California, and Texas. They inventory products for residential and commercial pool construction, remodeling, service, repair, and everything in between. Visit poolelectrical.com to find a location near you where providing outstanding customer service is their number one goal. And don't forget to check out episode 106 of the podcast, where we interviewed Scott and David all about PEP. To find out more, click the link below.
So let's jump into what options Jobber has for weekly pool service. What does the routing look like on a kind of weekly basis?
Absolutely. So scheduling is another big piece. I know we've just dove through estimating. So now that we're onto the scheduling of that work, a couple huge things I want to talk about. So first and foremost, you kind of nailed it there, routing. So routing, a lot of times we have people who have, 20 jobs booked for the day, and they just sort of have a list of those jobs, and it's scattershot. And they send 5 guys, they have 2 guys working for them. They split the list right down the middle. You go take half, and, you go take half. Our routing system allows you to see every job that you have booked for that day on a map. You can select the employee's name at the top of the screen and select the jobs you want them to take care of. This allows you to make sure that, it only makes sense to make sure you're scheduling guys in certain areas of the city to be the most effective and get the most jobs in a day. A lot of times, one of the questions you ask, what do I ask off the bat, is how do you schedule? And we hear that people are really losing out on money because they maybe schedule 10 jobs, but because of the way they scheduled them, they were only able to get to 7. And now 3 of those jobs have to get carried over to tomorrow. And now what do we do about tomorrow's jobs? So on the routing side of things, we give you a picture of a map with every job on that map, allow you to then select what jobs you want to dispatch for each of your employees. And as soon as you click save, it triggers 2 actions. It'll send that employee a notification letting them know that their schedule's been updated and here is all the jobs that are listed for them today. And then it'll also build a route for you. So it will take those 10 jobs, it'll build the smartest route for you, and of course allow you to, if your guys are coming from the south side of the city, you guys can select what job you want to start the day on, and the system will then route those jobs for you. So what again we're trying to do is save business owners that hours they spend at night, trying to figure out schedules for the next day or figure out who's going where. You're going to be able to do that in our system in a matter of minutes instead of hours.
Yeah. So what would be the first thing that you do from, we talked about doing the initial bid and they got the card on file and they're doing all those things. What is the first thing that you're going to do? So you're going to go to that client's page with all their information, their property details, and are you going to assign that to a technician?
So I'll tell you what, we're going to make it a little easier, actually. So once the quote is approved, so we've gotten to the point where the client has given us the thumbs up to do the work. There is a big green button at the top of your screen that says convert to a job. When you select that button, it is dragging over everything that you had from the quote. So all the client's informations, the line items, the custom fields, everything we've already talked about gets dragged over to a job creation form. And then what it allows you to do is book the job in. And this is where we can customize depending on what type of service you're offering. So if you're doing a biweekly service, it's what we call recurring work. So you can then go ahead and on this recurring job, you can select the parameters. So let's use a super simple example. We're going every 2 weeks on Wednesday. You give the software those parameters every 2 weeks on Wednesday for the next 8 months. The system will then go ahead and generate those jobs every 2 weeks on Wednesdays for the next 8 months. So now you never forget about this work. You never forget to, go out and complete it. It's built in and ready to go. At that point in time, if you wanted to schedule an employee to take care of that job every 2 weeks, you absolutely can. If you wanted to do it on an ad hoc basis where it's every week, it might be somebody different, no problem at all. It's still built in your schedule and we're just waiting for you to assign an employee to it. So we want to make sure we keep it incredibly simple. And once you book a recurring work job in, it's kind of book it and forget it because it's always going to be in your schedule.
So if I have a technician that has 15 jobs a day and I want them to recur every week, how would that look?
So every week, 15 jobs would show up on that person's schedule so that when they open their Monday, every Monday is consistent with those 15 jobs listed and all the information included, as well as any photos attached in those jobs. So on a recurring job, if you took a photo last Monday and then you show up to that same house and you've got some, maybe your short-term memory is not as hot, you can open up those photos and see what you did last week as well.
Nice. Does that bog up the calendar? I mean, is there ways to change the calendar views? Because I know that was kind of a complaint we used to hear a lot and kind of bugged us a little bit, to be honest, where it was just so many things on the calendar where you couldn't really figure out what's going on.
Totally. So what we've done to kind of help combat that is we have 5 different views that you can look at as far as calendars go. So this can be everything from your general monthly view that you guys have seen on, if you own a Google or an Apple phone or anything like that, the standard calendar, down to a daily breakdown of your employees. So we call it grid view. And what that does is instead of listing it as Monday and all the jobs on Monday, it lists all of your technicians Monday, and what jobs they're scheduled for. So now what you're doing is you're looking at, Tyler, Greg, and Chris on this schedule, and you can see that Greg and Tyler have 15 jobs each, and Chris only has 7. So we have room to add work to his schedule today. So really important. I always make the joke when I was chatting with clients that we offer 5 views. You guys are probably going to find one view that you love and you're going to work off of it 90% of the time, but we want to make sure we have that view for you. So we've got the 5 options, and, it allows you to play around and figure out what works best for your company.
I think it's a big deal as the owners. We have our own schedules that are going to be more like bid schedules and meeting schedules and things like that. But if we want to see the technician schedules, that option is there, but it's not bogging up our personal calendar, right? I don't want to see 30 or 50 jobs that are scheduled today on my calendar, but I have the option to see my own calendar or see the technician, just as certain technicians on the calendar. So you can change that kind of and customize the calendar so that it's not bogging up your personal calendar, right?
Exactly. And you know what? We built in filters to allow you to turn things on and off. So if, I hear it from a lot of business owners, they'll actually have their wife as an employee and they'll have pick up milk on there as a task scheduled in for them. Well, if you don't want to see all of that on your schedule because you're in the middle of a busy day, you can turn off those. You can turn off, you can filter out employees to make sure it's not bogged down. And to go one step further, we've also color coordinated it. So each employee has a color assigned to their name. And that also just gives you a visual representation. If you're taking a quick look or let's say you get a rare vacation day where you're taking it off, you can still look at your calendar, quickly have an understanding of what's going on and who's where.
So the big thing is the reporting that's going to go from the technician to the homeowner. How are we doing all of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a feature that we call job forms in the software. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that if you guys are showing up to a job and you need to report back as to what was done on that job, or if you have any sort of forms that you need to fill out and send to them, a service report form, that's built in. So when you create the job, you can have it a job form attached with that so that when your guys show up, they have that job form sitting attached to that job. They can click on it and fill that out in seconds. And this job form, just like our request form, is completely customizable. So it can be drop-down fields, check boxes, text fields, you name it. You can add 1 question, you could add 50 questions. But this can then be attached to the job so that when your guys are there, they're filling this information out as they go. And at the end, there's a big email button at the top allowing you to send that off to the office or to the customer himself. So it allows you to get creative with where that information goes, but it ensures that that information is collected. And then, of course, saved to that client's profile so that if you have to reference back to that, or you get to the house and one reading is completely off from last week, you can reference back and understand where that came from.
Right. And is there a limit to how many different forms you make?
You can make as many forms as you'd like, and you can attach as many forms as you'd like to the job. So, and once you make a form, they're living on the back end so that if you have form X that you only use on 1 out of 80 jobs, it's still sitting there ready to go. When that 1 out of 80 pops up, you can attach that job form to it, as well as all of your traditional forms that you would always attach. So again, customization and how your company works will match that.
So this was huge. Like this would have been so huge for our business because what we were using, there was probably about 50 things that nobody ever needed to see. And we always said like, man, if there was just a way that we can have so many of these other features mixed in with being able to edit these things, everybody listening can probably relate to this, that we want a custom form for this pool because it's a pool spa and maybe there's a fountain and there's some special things that need to be done where that form is created just for them. Because there could even be in there that, when you backwash, you add this exact amount of DE at this time. Or you can make a customizable form for each and every pool. And we definitely believe that having that capability, you are, minimizing your risk of the tech. You're setting the technician up for success because everything they see, it could be 5 things, it could be 20 things, but those are the things that need to be done. Nothing more, nothing less. Love that.
Yeah, it's huge for if you have to transfer that to another person or somebody that's never been there, because I know that feeling of going to a brand new house that you've never been to. There's always that little fear inside you that's like, oh, if I don't do everything perfect for this client, like I may get a call because I've never been here before, but maybe it wasn't my fault that I didn't know that I needed to add this much or do this thing because it wasn't in the notes or nobody ever told me. But if you have a custom form for that client, for that specific pool, then whoever goes there knows exactly all the little, nuances of that client.
Yeah, and you working with if you're training or working with the technicians, you can even figure out the order in which they do the steps at the pool. So it's like, okay, you check the skimmer basket first. Okay, we'll put that first. And then you test the chems. Okay, we'll put that next. Oh, you skim and then brush and then back. Like all these different things, like you can put it in the exact order of when it's done.
Yeah, because we had special clients, there was specific things like you have to vacuum this pool every week or things like that. That would certain order is the way that it would go and the way that the pool would work and function best. Like that's huge.
And you can even, this is a job, right, Chris? So you can, if there was a client that wanted to be notified 30 minutes before you got there because they need to put their dog away or something like that, are you able to do that?
Absolutely. So we have on our way text messaging built into the app itself. So when your technicians are sitting in the driveway of the job they just completed and are looking at their next job, there's a button they can click on that opens up their map with that next job. Your map will tell you, listen, you're 25 minutes out. When you look at the job itself, there's a text message bubble that you can click on, and it's 2 clicks. It's the text message bubble and then how long out are you? And with the click of a send, now that customer has a heads up with we will be arriving in 30 minutes. Or likewise, if you're stuck at a job, which happens and there's nothing you can do about it, you can then pull up your next job and send them a notification letting them know you're actually 30 minutes behind. And you don't love to be late for jobs, but I'll tell you, the customer appreciates it 10 times more when they have a heads up, because there's nothing worse than sitting there going, I don't know if they're still coming. Do we call the office? Now that's a headache that you've placed on your client, and that's not their job. That's your job to inform them. So we make sure that we've got customer facing pieces in the app to keep them updated throughout the day.
Damn.
On those reoccurring,
round up the brothers team. We're back. We're getting back in. I'm going back out there.
On the reoccurring jobs, so next week, does it recreate a brand new form then every time?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a fresh form every time. If you pull up last week's visit, you'll see last week's form, but every week it'll be a fresh form or forms attached to it. One of the important things too, and you mentioned this, you can get incredibly detailed on those forms, but if it is something like we need to vacuum every week that we're there, you can actually add that in the custom fields area as well. So there's a number of ways. And the reason I mentioned that is you guys love the forms. I've heard from other clients that love having it just on the main page so that when they open up the job, the first thing they see is custom fields and anything that employee needs to know for the job. Mm-hmm. So again, this is where it's important because, I'd actually set you guys up with the job forms on Jobber. But if I had another client that liked the custom fields, we can make that work for them just as well and make sure that all that information is ready to go for when that employee shows up. So again, we're going to mold to the way that you run your business.
Right. And tracking the employees throughout the day is super important too. Can you talk about the Waypoint marketing option that's on there?
Absolutely. So tracking employees and just employee management is super important. And probably one of the trickier things as you're starting to grow the business is you're starting to maybe hire people. You guys are lucky. You're related to each other. So you guys might be able to, just fist fight it out over a job that was missed or whatever. But if you're hiring new people and you're not sure, you want to make sure they're getting the work done in a timely manner and being honest about it. Our app will track them for you. So anytime that they interact with the app, whether it's starting a timer, so starting their day timer to track their hours, or starting a timer on a job, that's going to drop a pin on a map. And so at the end of a day, if you gave a guy 10 jobs and he finished 3 jobs and you go, I wonder where we got caught up in time, what was the issue today? You can pull up a map and see everywhere that employee was to make sure that you're getting the honest and proper work out of them. So Waypoint marketing is what it's called. And the other really nice part is it's incredibly light on data. So everyone has a smartphone at this point. When they're clocking in and out, it's not adding anything to their bill, but it's allowing you to track them and make sure that, you're being as efficient with your team as possible.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. That's really important for, just so you know that they were actually at the house and that they did the work at that specific job, because it's going to tell you that they interacted with the Jobber app here, and you can see on location every time that was done. That's a big deal for, trusting the employees.
And on the side of trusting employees, I think it's important to note too, there's employees' permissions in the software. So your employees don't have access to everything you have access to as the business owner. You can kind of decide what way they can take and use the app. So if, for example, you don't want them to see the prices that you're charging your clients, no problem. You can turn pricing off so that they can see the job and what you have to do, but they won't see the price of that job. So you really do have control over each and every user in your software to make sure that they have the proper level of power, I guess, inside the software.
Another thing too, with all the forms, are you able to export all of that data into like a CSV? Is there a feature like in the settings that you're able to actually export all the different things that are input?
So you can download those forms, absolutely. On a larger scale, anything like customer data or job history or any of the reports. So we have 23 unique reports that we run on the back end of Jobber. All can be exported to an Excel document or a CSV file so that you guys can take that information and take it anywhere that you need to take it, or even just sometimes it's nice to just build tables on Excel or whatever the case might be. So anything in Jobber is exportable. It's all your data. We're just there to facilitate it. So at any point, you can pull anything off our software.
That's awesome, because there's a lot of things that you want to measure, because even with the jobs, you have to start a timer on that job. Am I correct?
Correct. Absolutely.
And you end the timer. So, I mean, if you're really trying to like figure some numbers out, you can see actually how much time is going per pool, how much time is actually going into the work, and how much time is in the drive time. Right. And like, how come it takes this guy, this amount of time, and it takes this other person twice as long? Right. Like something's not right. But that's what's cool about all the different data that you're able to export out of there. That's cool.
Absolutely. And that data leads to, again, making more money for the company. When you can look and review those kind of numbers, it really does add up on the back end. And again, if you're running it out of pen and paper, it's really tricky to track any of that. I would almost say impossible to track any of that. So,
right. So what happens if somebody's sick or the weather's bad and, you need to move pools around or move them to a different technician? This is a huge one.
Absolutely. We run into this. This is probably one of the first questions we get asked. So our scheduling, couple things you need to know. It's all drag and drop. So if you wake up today and, even a client emails you this morning and says, we had a family emergency, is there any way that you can come tomorrow? You can select that job, drag it to the next day, and that's going to go actually notify the employee that was assigned to that job to let them know that that job has changed to tomorrow's date. So now you're able to make quick changes to the schedules without having to call around to every employee and go through that kind of a headache. On a wider scale, if you wake up and it's a thunderstorm of the century outside and you need to move your work, you can actually mass move jobs. So you can select all jobs from today and move them to Wednesday, or select all jobs that were assigned to Tyler and move them to Greg. So we allow you to basically manipulate your schedule as quickly as you need to make sure that, and every time you make those updates, the most important piece is that the employees get that notification letting them know, because if they looked at their schedule last night and then woke up dreary-eyed and didn't take a look at their schedule, they're probably just going to head out to their first job they always do on Wednesdays, and that might have changed. So now they'll have a notification, just like your ESPN would give you a score update on your phone, letting them know that the schedule has changed and here is the new time. So again, we're trying to help that scheduling keep things fluid.
Kyle's over here nodding his head as a service manager, trying to reroute days people got sick or people didn't show up. Like he likes that feature.
No kidding.
Everybody does, I'm sure.
On top of that too, I mean, when you move an appointment, we also have client reminders that will go out. So if you have client reminders set to, the day before at noon, if you move that appointment, that's going to then trigger off a new reminder to that client, keeping them up to date, because, intuitively they're going to know, listen, it's storming outside. Our pool company probably isn't coming by today, but they want a heads up as to when they're going to be coming by. So it's that kind of thing that, again, we're just trying to save you guys time and headache when it comes to the scheduling aspect.
Man, you guys are killing it, because there's so many things that you can be creative with. It can even be a template email somewhere that's just reminding them if they have an issue with, like, well, I pay for this, and it's like, well, I'm gonna send you the part of the service agreement that you signed that says that we do chems only, or whatever it may be on these days, or whatever it may be. But yeah, this is extremely impressive.
on those recurring jobs, you can just move it one time only, right? It wouldn't mess up the rest of the jobs.
Yeah, awesome question. Absolutely. So when you move a job, like let's say you moved it from Wednesday to Thursday, we're going to ask you, do you want to move? Is this a permanent move? Are you moving every visit to Thursday, or is it a one-off move? And it's two options, and you simply click on the option that you'd like. So absolutely.
Yeah, it's big for those days, and you have to change it.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for PolarX's end of summer sale again. That means it's time for you to replenish your inventory and purchase those boosters. When we were running Brother, the PolarX sales were always one of our favorite times of the year. We got a discount on the product, but more importantly, we were setting up our pools for success while reducing chemical usage, which saved us a ton of time and money. Let me tell you more about the product. PolarX eliminates and prevents all types of algae, reduces chlorine demand, and lasts up to 6 months. This is where the boosters come in handy. If you purchase units in the spring, you can add a booster to those out in the field, and they can last another 6 months. With PolarX, there is no need for phosphate removers, clarifiers, or other algicides. While using PolarX, you will see high-definition water clarity. I mean, these pools just really pop. Right now, you can get $15 off a 4-pack of blue units, $17.50 off a 4-pack of black units, and $7.50 off a 4-pack of boosters at your favorite distribution location. The sale ends September 30th, so get them while you can. If you want to find out more about the product and how we used PolarX for our company, please check out episode 8 of the podcast, and you can also visit polarx.com by clicking the link below. So moving on from like the recurring jobs to kind of these one-off jobs, more like the repair side of things, we didn't really take on jobs unless they had a deposit. So can you talk about turning kind of a quote into a deposit?
Absolutely. So when you create a quote, at the very bottom of the quote, there's a couple fields that allow you to play with the money you're collecting and the tax and the discount. So you guys had referenced there the deposits. And with deposits, you can select a percentage or a dollar value. So at the bottom of a quote, right before you send it off, the last field you'll see is deposit. And when you select that, again, percentage or dollar, and that's now attached to the quote at the bottom, so that when the client goes to approve that quote, they'll actually have to put their card on file and make that deposit payment. And what we've done as well, because sometimes clients aren't looking at the entire quote. You know, you see it, you basically look at that number at the bottom of the quote sometimes and you go, great, that works for me. We've got it in big, bold writing underneath your line item saying a deposit for this job for a total of X is needed to move forward. And that way the client is in the know. You guys have then collected the deposit. When you receive that approved quote, the deposit accompanies it. And now you're able to go off and book that one-off job.
Yeah, we made this move like a few years into it because we kept chasing money, and chasing money was very difficult when you have technicians or repair technicians that are waiting to get paid and you haven't yet got paid yourself. So, I mean, the repair side of things, you know, after a certain point, we didn't take in on any jobs over $100 without like a deposit and that deposit was equal to basically whatever our cost was for the part and paying the technician. So when we took a deposit, that way our cost of the part and our cost of paying our guy to do the job was covered. And then really the rest of the money was like our profit on it. So we didn't get screwed if somebody didn't pay the rest of the job. We still were covered and we still came out even. And that was a huge change for us because it allowed us to keep, you know, our cash flow going and not waiting on trying to collect payments. And these repair jobs, you know, especially in our industry and in other industries as well, but, you know, they could be 10 grand or more. And if you're forking out 5-6 grand for equipment and, you know, they don't pay their bill, you're screwed with that bill. You still got to pay your employee and, you know, you're in big trouble. So that was a really big deal for us. And this deposit option was amazing because it was just basically like, you know, then we would inform them, like, we can't get you on the schedule until this is paid. So you're not expecting us to come out because you didn't pay anything. If you pay the deposit, that's when the office manager or myself will contact you and we'll tell you when the repair is going to be done. But we need you to pay the deposit. And also, like you said, in the field, I did that like 80% of the time. I would close it right then and there. And, you know, I could take the deposit, I could take the card, do it for them, then call the office manager and be like, hey, I booked this job, put it on the schedule for blah, blah, blah. And so it just gives you so much control over, you know, your cash flow.
And talking about that, if you have any customers or you're thinking about taking deposits, but you're worried that they're going to say, oh, like, why do you need 50% or why do you need 75%? We had that happen quite a bit, but I use the same line every time and it always worked. And it was just like, we've had a lot of customers in the past that stiffed us and did not pay us the money that is needed. And this is how we support our families. Our team needs to get paid. We have, insurance. We have all kinds of different things we need to pay for. That's why we do this. Like, yep, got it.
And that's where it's important that it looks professional when you send it to them, because if you're asking for money up front before the service has actually occurred, well, if you're writing this on carbon paper, handwritten, and I'll tell you, my handwriting was awful when I was doing this for my invoices. It's tougher for that client to trust you and want to pay you. Whereas if you send them documentation and it is official and they're able to put an e-signature on it and it's all online for them to review, that's where they have that, okay, I think we can trust these guys. They clearly have their ducks in a row. Let's move forward with this.
And you may get a little tiny bit of pushback from people, like you said, and that's the line we always use. It worked majority of the time. But the ones that don't want to pay the deposit and don't want to move forward, those are probably the clients you don't want anyways. So, I mean, it worked out in our favor. You could tell, all right, well, then we're not a good fit for you, and vice versa. And most of the time I try to give them a referral to somebody so they're taken care of. But, this is the way we do things. This is how our business runs. And you reached out to us for a reason, because we do things well. You liked something about us to contact us. This is how we do things. If you don't like it, then I'm sorry, but here's another option for you.
Yeah, but this, using, Jobber and having this level of professionalism, that is a piece of that. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's so many different variables, but when you get a quote and you're being educated and the communication is on point, I feel like people are a lot more likely to move forward with, the quote you had given them. Right. It's so much different when it's just like a text message or, just some vague email. It's like, yeah, it's going to be $5,500 or whatever, but you're giving them everything that they need. And you're reassuring them that we keep all of this on file at any point in time. If you need any information on the pump we installed, please let us know. Because when we got done, we took a picture of everything, the serial number, everything. So if they had a warranty issue or anything like that, contact us. We are a professional company. We can be found anywhere. We're not going anywhere. Well, in this case, we did go somewhere, but we, people still hit us up after the fact that we sold our business, and we still had all their information, and we still help people. But that is a piece of it right there.
Yeah, man, it's big. So with these one-off jobs and feedback and reviews being so important now these days, what options does Jobber give for follow-up with these customers?
Totally. So we have a job follow-up feature. So when you guys customize what this says, we have a survey that you include in it. You guys can include your own review sites. You guys can put whatever you need to put in this. But when you close out a job, it'll actually trigger that to go off. And think of this as two things. Think of this as a thank you to a client. So the top of this message is hey, we appreciate you for choosing our service. We hope that, you guys were satisfied with everything that went on today. We'd love to hear back from you. Online reviews are one of the biggest things that are driving businesses nowadays as we all move to just completely technology dependent. So if you're able to link yourself, and I'm sure you guys can name me 50 customers that you still remember on a first name basis who you absolutely loved working with and, you had a good rapport with, you want to capitalize on those clients, and they understand that as well. So what I've always recommended to my clients that are getting these job surveys completed is be honest in that when you create that, when you're writing what you want to put to the client, and this is standardized, so you write it once and it goes off to all your clients when you close a job, be honest and say, our business lives off reviews, and we'd really appreciate it if you could take 2 minutes to drop us a quick review here. And when you're honest with the client and you've done good work for them, a lot of the time they're going to be willing to jump on that review site and drop a quick 5 stars for you. And, that's what's going to help start to rack that up. So yeah, job follow-up forms are incredibly important and a great way to start to bump up those reviews.
Yeah, even if the feedback's not so great where they respond to it, you want that, right? I much rather them give me the feedback through there where we can fix it internally and hopefully avoid it maybe going
right.
I'd be smart about it too. Like if you didn't give somebody the greatest experience and
turn that off.
And let's be real here. Don't ask for reviews if you were having a real shitty day or they were and nothing was going right. Don't just you gotta stay Stay
Well,
quiet.
and I'll give you one more example. People are, especially new businesses, are a little bit nervous to ask for reviews because they actually don't know. They think they did a great job, but they don't know what the client's going to say. So if you're a brand new business and you don't want to put your Yelp page up on this yet, we can actually just include a survey at the bottom of this that goes out that they click a number between 1 and 10 on their satisfaction level, and they can drop you a note. And so if you want to test how you're doing early on in your company's creation, go ahead and send that with that survey. And if you're getting a bunch of 10s back, you're on the right path. If you're getting a bunch of 3s back, it's time to, chat with those clients and say, where can we improve to give you a better service level? So yeah, totally get that. Not maybe always wanting to send a review link out.
You know what you did wrong.
Right. Oh, man. For sure. Yeah. Thanks for that, Chris. Appreciate it. Let's talk about billing for a minute, because this is a huge piece and a huge time suck for a lot of people in this industry. So one thing we found out the other week when we were talking is now that you guys have automatic invoicing and automatic payments set up, which wasn't there when we were using it, would have saved me tons and tons of time. So, we've talked about this credit card authorization form. So once you have a card on file and then you set up these reoccurring automatic invoices, how does that work and how does that get paid?
Absolutely. So when I mentioned earlier, you're creating a recurring job and you're giving us the parameters by which you're showing up to that job. So every 2 weeks on Wednesday, for example, underneath that, we're going to ask you for the parameters of when you want to invoice. And again, this is where when you come to Jobber, we're going to ask you a bunch of questions. Do you invoice after every job? Do you invoice at the end of the month? What does a typical invoice schedule look like for you? We can match whatever that schedule might be. So let's say in this example, you guys tell me we just invoice at the end of the month for all of our visits that month. You tell the software we want to invoice the last day of the month, and you turn on automatic payments because you've already vaulted a credit card on file. What that's going to do is at the end of every month, it's going to collect all the visits that you had. So 2, let's say, are biweekly. So 2 visits this month. It'll collect those visits. It will create an invoice. It will automatically pay the invoice using the card on file. And it's going to send a completed receipt and invoice to the client. I can't tell you, this is probably the part where I pause the most with clients, because this is, I think, probably going to save the most amount of time and, frankly, the most amount of headache. You guys talking deposits were even giving me anxiety about not getting paid for work. That's the worst feeling in the world, and we're trying to help clean that up.
So much time, I'm telling you. I have, through QuickBooks, man, you have to, create the invoice, which that can be done automatically, but I had to go through every single client, open the invoice, add the extra stuff, click save, then charge the card on file, then send the receipt for every single 400 clients. I got it down to 8 hours, but that's still so much time. And if it did it, automatically generated it for you, automatically charged it for you, and automatically sent the receipt, it's huge. Huge.
Absolutely. And you know what? You guys were asking about those, you show up for a weekly visit and you have to do an extra service. If you've added that extra service to just that visit, that will also appear on that invoice. So you really don't need to worry about going back and making sure that everything was paid for. It's all sitting there for you at the end of the month, and you can review it. And the client also gets a copy of this, which is incredibly important, because then they know they've been charged. And and again, it's that professional look of an invoice sitting there for them at the end of the month.
Right. So if I add an O-ring or a basket to a recurring invoice as a one-time charge, does it fall off for the next month? Does it just go back to the regular recurring charge?
Exactly. Because you might not always charge for the O-ring. We want that to be a one-off charge for that visit, and that's it.
Yeah, that's freaking awesome, man.
Maybe that'll help people, almost making money is fun again. Right. Instead of the other way where it's you're damn, I hate billing.
I know, man.
This just sucks. But it's when it's that simplified, it's man, I can really get into the weeds on how we can make more money, or your time could just be spent in different places.
8 hours, man. And I'm good. And I was good at it. There's people who are not so good with money or not so good with computers, that take 16, 24 hours. I know people who would take 2 or 3 days.
It's a whole season of Narcos right there. You can,
right?
Man.
Yeah, seriously, guys. It really does save time. And honestly, a lot of times it also saves you from forgetting to invoice somebody, because that happens. That's one of the most common things I've heard, at least asking questions from clients, is, hey, we forgot to invoice this client. It's 2 months later. That's too embarrassing to go back and ask for the money. this makes sure that you are invoicing no matter what. And if you choose not to store cards on file or, aren't turning on automatic payments, we'll still create the invoice for you and remind you at the end of the month and allow you to take the next step then. So if, you don't trust software yet and you want to take it one step at a time, that's no problem. We'll still help out and still save you a ton of time.
But going back to like what you said earlier about setting this up in the beginning, people are afraid to ask for credit cards on file. I don't understand why, but I mean, I get that you don't want to ask for somebody's credit card maybe, but like getting that up front and establishing that in the beginning of your business is so big because it just gives you the money, the cash flow you need to operate and to hire your first employee and to do all this, to buy your first truck. Like all that money needs to be coming in. If you have thousands of dollars, I mean, I know people who have 30 grand that are in collections right now at some of these pool companies. Like 30 grand is a truck. Like a whole truck you could have just bought. I mean, that's huge. I kept ours down to like $1,500 because we still had some of the old clients that wanted to pay by check. But if you establish that in the beginning, like this is how we do it. We have automatic billing, automatic payments. They sign the form saying it's okay. Like your money just is there for you. And I can't tell you how big it is. It's crazy.
And that's because some people say, well, I don't think I'm professional enough. I don't think they're going to want to put their card on file with me. I'm like, because you don't look professional. You are right.
Right.
Be professional and get that shit.
Right.
Like that's as easy as that. When you have that confidence and you look the part and you said, just like I said on the phone, we're going to need to put the card on file. Here's the form. Da 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 da. It's like, you know what's up? Like when you come over there, just like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're in a cutoff flip-flops. Yeah, I'm going to need that card on file, bruh. No. You are not putting my card on file, bruh.
Right, bruh?
No.
And listen, that time that you can invest back into whatever you need to, that's a big thing for people. Tyler, you're spending 8 hours at the end of a month doing invoicing. What would you have done with that 8 hours, right? Is that going back into helping grow the business? Is that some family time with what I see in the background? I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to help with here.
Right. Absolutely, man. Crazy.
Yeah, so I want to touch on one more thing when it comes to the invoicing side of things. If your techs are in the field, a lot of the times it's going to be the customer that comes outside and says, hey, can we add this? Or the tech notices that a part needs to be replaced. Just kind of coming full circle with everything we've talked about on the custom fields. If you've got the manufacturer and serial number that you guys already mentioned, you collect on all of these jobs. Well, now your tech, as long as he has permissions to adjust pricing on that end, can actually open up that job and add that service on the fly. He's going to have the list of what the manufacturer is. The part will be on his line items. He can simply type in this starting name of the manufacturer. That will bring up a list of everything you've built on the back end as far as pricing goes. And now not only has he been able to update his billing to make sure at the end of the month when you invoice, everything gets charged for, but now he's done it quickly and can jump into that repair immediately. And again, we're saving time on that job so that that job gets completed quicker and he's on his way to the next job quicker.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's huge. And even if you have a service manager like we did with Kyle, like Kyle could see that addition. And then if you gave that person permission to add to the invoices, they could. So you could save time. Obviously, you want people that you can trust doing these interactions if you're going to talk about billing people. But like you said, they have to have certain permissions to be able to do that. So that's cool. You can customize permissions as well. The ones you trust to add it, you can. The ones you don't, you don't. So that's big.
Exactly.
And what other options of automating within the software are available?
Yeah, so I've kind of touched on this a little bit throughout, but automating in the software, a lot of it is to do with the client. So we want client reminders to go out. That's one of the big things that we see from companies is they want to remind their clients, because if you show up and they're not home and you can't get access, you're in big trouble now. You've wasted a whole trip out. So we have client reminders that will go out on the job side of things. And customized by the company themselves. So if you guys send yours out the day before at noon, great. If you want to send them out the morning of at 8 a.m., you can set those up that way. So that reminder gets off to the client and is ready to go. Follow-up or job completion reminders, we've touched on those. At the end of a job, sends a note to the client thanking them, asking for a review. On our Grow package, we've even gone one step further with quoting, and we've sent out some quote reminders. So you can actually have the software follow up on these quotes. So it's probably when I ask this question, it's the first thing that people go, you know what, we probably have let that slip, is following up on your quotes. Once you send a quote, how do you follow up? What's that process look like? Well, if you're using carbon paper and you went over and the neighbor came over and asked you for a quote, I bet you 9 times out of 10, you're not even following up unless they call you to accept that accept that work. So what we can do on the software on the back end is we can set up basically a timeline for when you want the software to prompt reminders to that client. So let's say it's 5 days after you send a quote. If we haven't heard back, the software can then send an email to the client saying, we'd love to do business and haven't heard back on this quote. Please let us know what you think. And then maybe a second prompt to go out 7 days after that. And it's a text and email to that client saying, you still haven't heard, we'd love to do business. Get back to us on this quote. So what we're trying to do there is help you guys. If we can help close 1 or 2 more quotes a month, we're starting to pay for ourselves as far as the software goes. And that's really important. So there's a ton of automation in the software that, again, saving you guys some time.
Right. Yeah. Ton of useful information. Thank you.
I think the reminders to the client would be huge for us, where when we did filter cleans, like 1 day a week, we had somebody doing filter cleans, and every time Kyle would send out either a text in the morning or email in the morning saying we're coming, because you're probably coming on a day that's not their normal service day. So if you were able to set that up and it was like all these jobs for today, let's send out a reminder right now automatically, like that would save a ton of time for like instances like that.
Yes. And everybody needs to get a Nextdoor profile for their community to see what clients are saying about pool technicians and companies. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest complaints, and I personally have, is that you think that you can show up whenever the hell you want.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
If there's like this, you're here every week around this time, that is something, but it's like you just come on whatever day you want, or you're normally here at 10 and you're going to come at 5 a.m. today.
Right.
Like, dude, that's not cool.
Right.
Like, you walk into my backyard at 5 o'clock in the morning, like shit's going to get nasty. I'm just waiting to whoop somebody's ass that walks in my backyard at 5 o'clock in the morning. But anyway, like that is a huge thing. And if you're going to like let them know, if we're going to be there a little bit earlier than usual, we will notify you and you can reply to that text message. So if that's not okay, then just reply. If we don't hear back from you, then maybe you just go for it. I don't know. But I just wanted to bring that up because I feel like I hear that a lot and I see that a lot, mm-hmm. where it's just people just randomly showing up. Like I told you, the paint company at my house.
Yep.
I'm like, dude, where are these people at? They were here only a couple hours.
Yeah.
And then, you finally get through to the company. It's like, oh, well, they said that, they didn't have something. I think they're going to try to get back in a couple days. I'm like, was anybody going to let us know?
Yeah.
Like, you're having us park around the corner so you can paint this damn house.
Right.
Like, exactly. What's up with the communication? I actually talked to them about Jobber, and they're just like, yeah, well, we kind of, no, you don't kind of have shit. You don't have anything. Nobody told me what was going on. I had to call you. Yeah, you should quit.
Do you think you had a bad experience with that one?
Yeah. Owner's kids.
Right.
That's how it goes. Sorry about that. Let's move on. So for anybody that's interested in Jobber, what does the onboarding process look like?
Absolutely. So if anyone's interested in Jobber, first of all, we have a 14-day trial. We want to make sure that you guys have a chance to jump in it and play around and make sure it's going to fit you. So I'm sure you guys will include a link in the bio of the podcast. Mention Pool Chasers if you are signing up for the trial. But what it looks like on our end is we have a dedicated team that will reach out to you when you start the trial and really do a lot of what we've discussed today. So all those questions I asked about processing and or your processes, we're going to reach out and we're going to walk through with you because we're blatantly honest. If it's not going to fit or you are really stuck in your ways and that software won't work for you, we'll be honest with you. If the software is going to work for you, we're going to walk through and show you exactly how we're going to mesh into your processes you're currently using and how we're hopefully going to save you some time. So the first step is a 14-day trial. You have our full team here to answer any questions. We do full demos where we get really visual and walk through what a fully set up account would look like. After that, we have an onboarding team, and they're probably my favorite part at Jobber. Once you sign up for Jobber, and we have monthly or annual contracts, so even if you said, let's give it a couple months, let's see if this will work out for us, we have an onboarding team that then takes all the notes that you gave to our team when you were walking through the demos, and they make sure that you're comfortable, getting this thing up and running for your company, because that's the biggest thing is, I mentioned it earlier, but you sign up for something and then you don't use it. Well, we want to make sure you're using it, and we're going to keep you accountable. So our team's going to be there to answer your questions, set up up appointments with you to go through anything you maybe have run into in your first week using the software. But we're kind of there hand in hand to make sure that, that the adoption of the software goes as smoothly as possible. And then just to kind of round everything out, our customer support team, we call it our success team here at Jobber, is phenomenal. They're around at all times. You can text in through the app itself. So we have a little chat bubble at the bottom. This number might be off now, but I do recall it being, I think it's a 37-second response time for that chat window. So we've got a full team there sitting ready to help. And then you can call in and talk to a live person. So and then, you know what the nice part is too, if our entire success team is on the phone, if we're having a busy day, the worst case scenario, you're going to talk to a sales schmuck like myself, and I'll do my best to help you out. If I can't get you the help, we'll put you in our Slack channel and you'll have a call immediately. So we're pretty hands-on when it comes to your account and just making sure that it's as successful as possible.
Right. And, all that we've talked about is a lot of technology. So if somebody's not so comfortable with technology, like you said, using pen and paper, what do you guys do to make them more comfortable with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. First of all, I think what we've prided ourselves in is keeping our interface incredibly easy to use. So every time you do anything, so we talked about requests to quotes and quotes to jobs. Anytime you need to make that transformation, there's a big green button at the top of your screen that says next step, effectively. What is the next step after you send a quote? It's to book the job. That book job now button is sitting at the top. So first of all, the software we've built to be intuitive for those newer to the software industry. But on top of that, I can't overstress the onboarding and just the amount of hands-on we have here to make sure you're as comfortable with this as you need to be. And call us with any questions, whether you've used the software for a week or you two who are just getting back into it after a couple of years off. Call us and we will walk through it and make sure you're comfortable with every process. Right.
And for companies that maybe have an established business already, what you can import all the clients, right?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So we can absolutely, if you're using another software or you have processes already in place, we can import client information. So we can import your customer lists, all of that, and make sure you're up and running and you've got your database full. The only thing that won't move over from it, and mostly just because softwares probably won't open up their back end for us, is just your old invoices and quotes. So those you'll want to make sure you export and keep on hand. But outside of that, we'll make sure you're set up, you're fully confident on this new software, and are able to move on from your past operation.
Yeah, and another thing I love about Jobber is you guys have so much education out there. You've got everything from the Facebook group. You've got really good blogs in the settings. There's the new updates that you have made. Now you recently got the podcast, all kinds of different things. Really love that piece. Is there where are all the places that people can find Jobber besides the ones I mentioned?
Absolutely. So first of all, thank you for the shout out. The podcast is really new, but we're really excited to get it launched. I think one of the cool things about what we do is we talk to so many people like yourself where we learn, just how they're running their business. And sometimes there's something I can take from your business. And when I'm chatting with a client, I might be able to mention and say, hey, have you ever thought about doing it this way? And that really does translate to clients, especially, if you're just starting up a podcast or starting up a company, a pool cleaning company, and I can reference Pool Chasers and say, listen, like these guys are established in the industry for this many years. Like they've gone through and made the mistakes that you're probably going to run into. So if we can help eliminate some of those, that's fantastic. But to just get to where you can find all of our information, if you go to getjobber.com, all of our information is up there. You can find links to our podcast. And then I think maybe most importantly is our academy, where we share tons of different articles. We co-write them with a ton of different industry experts to make sure that we're just getting as much information out there as possible that's relevant to your field. So if you're curious at all, even if you Google pool company Jobber, there's going to be about 10 articles where we have, testimonials, or we have, here's how we use this software to really kind of help paint the picture of how it might work for your company.
Yeah, we'll provide the links for all that so you can see it on the episode webpage and everything. And just to touch base on your customer support one more time, Greg and I used to talk all the time about just when we pick the phone up and call a Jobber, like it's an immediate almost answer. And everybody on there has always been so friendly, walked us through everything. If we had a question, it was always answered. It was never like a pain in the butt to call Jobber. There's lots of companies you got to set aside an hour or two just to wait and do all this and that. But like as soon as we would just be talking to one another and be like, yeah, why don't you call up Jobber and see if it can do this or if it can do that, and you get somebody right away. So the interactions have always been great. I mean, we've done some trade shows with you guys. Everybody's always the best. So there's a reason we chose you. And like we always say, we vet everybody we work with, and we always have had such a good experience with Jobber.
That's great to hear. And I'll pass that along to the team because that'll mean a lot to them as well. So.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Chris. We really appreciate you taking the time to be on the podcast today. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. This was a ton of fun.
Hey, Pool Chasers. Thanks for checking out this episode. Did you know that each episode has its own page on our website? This is where you can find more information about the guest and episode topic, as well as all the resources that we discuss throughout the show. To get to the webpage, click the link below. Also below, you will find links to the sponsors of the show, as well as links to follow us on our social media channels. On our channels, you will find some of our favorite clips and bonus material. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Our tag is Pool Chasers. We also have a Facebook group for the Pool Chasers community. Here you will find like-minded professionals all looking to make each other better. One last thing. If the episode has brought you value, please check out our Patreon page to support us. And if you could please rate and review the podcast, we would love to hear what your favorite topics are. Thank you for your time and your ear.
See you out there, Pool Chasers.